broadcasting from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and airing on WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk where facts matter. Welcome to The Gaily Show, the only daily LGBTQ radio news and talk show in the United States. I am your host, John Parker. It is Friday, and we end our weeks talking about culture and entertainment because queer artists, writers, filmmakers, theater makers, etc. are one of the most censored groups in America today. And so every week we want to lift up their work for you to read and watch and or attend. What is on the show today? It is the third Friday of the month, which means author and critic Ilana Masad is back with 3 books that we need to be reading. She will join us at the bottom of the hour. But up first, Ahmad Saber is a medical doctor specializing in rheumatology and internal medicine. Born and raised in Pakistan, Ahmad and his family moved to Canada while he was in high school. His debut novel, Ramin Abbas Has Major Questions, comes out on March 3rd and is partially based on Ahmad's life. And he joins us now. Ahmad, welcome to The Gaily Show.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. And just a quick shout out because I heard Minnesota and Minneapolis. I just want to shout out to Minneapolis.
Oh, yes. Yes, we are based here in Minneapolis. We appreciate that. And I guess I should start by saying, on behalf of America, we apologize.
I'll pass that on to, I guess, the Prime Minister.
Please do. Please do. All right. So, all right, I'm going to hold this up for our YouTube viewers right now. Gorgeous cover. Congratulations on that. And what can folks expect to, Ahmad, when they turn to page 1 of Ramin Abbas Has Major Questions?
Oh, wow. Okay. So when readers turn into page 1, they're going to see Ramin Abbas basically dreaming in the middle of Ramadan, having some sinful dreams about Timothy Chalamet. And I think also The Rock, Dwayne The Rock Johnson. So, yeah, I think it starts off on a kind of cheeky note. But really, I think it's actually a great question because really the first scene really anchors you into the story. It really begins with a prayer during Ramadan for this kid to get what he wants from life while also struggling and battling his inner demons, specifically his struggle with acceptance of his authentic sexuality.
I don't know if I should admit this on the radio, but the power of suggestion, Ahmad. Like I read that first chapter, and I kid you not, that night I had a dream about Timothy Chalamet. Who I have never been attracted to Timothy Chalamet, and I read the chapter, and like literally that night, I woke up the next morning and was like, I should probably say that. So congratulations, Ahmad. It had a very visceral response.
Okay, well, it's working. The writing worked.
It definitely worked. Okay, I read this was 7 years in the making. How do you go from a doctor of rheumatology and internal medicine to a debut novelist? I mean, that is a journey, 7 years.
Yeah, it's definitely a long and hard journey, but one very, very well worth it. I would say it just took sheer willpower. Like once I knew I wanted to tell a story, and then particularly this story, I just powered through it. I have this kind of procrastination and power through style where I would like leave things, and then I'll get this wind of energy and just kind of blast through it. So a lot of writing sprints really helped. There are wonderful writing channels on YouTube, so they will put on like a beautiful music track for you, like classical music, and it'll be like you'll pretend you're, for example, on a Victorian train, and then you just write, and they give you like 30-minute segments to just sprint, and then there'll be like a little ding, and then you take a 5-minute break, eat a cookie or something. So that really helped. Yeah. Anybody who's a writer will definitely love writing sprints. And then I wrote it after work, in between patients. But yeah, it wasn't easy, but I'm glad I did it.
I've never heard of these on YouTube. I'm definitely going to make use of those on YouTube. That is. Oh my gosh, I can't wait. All right, I'm gonna do that this weekend. Okay, so I am Armenian American on my mom's side, so that when folks are like Parker, that's my American side. And as an Armenian, I'll say essayist, and that's being generous. I find I have to constantly navigate about teaching the culture in my writing. And when I'm in workshops, people are like, "Don't show or don't tell, show, John. And I'm like, how do I explain 3,000 years of Armenian history in a glance or an off the cuff remark?
Yeah.
So talk to me about writing Ramin and navigating, because there's so much culture that you're sharing in
Yes.
the novel, and you do it really well, actually. It's not like me, where I'm just like, here's a chunk of history for you. Like, you do very well at like weaving together cultural knowledge through Ramin's perspective and the other characters that you're showing in there. I mean, at one point you're talking about like an engagement that's arranged. And so
Mm,
talk to me about how you navigated showing the culture
mhm,
and all the variety of it, and then like, okay, how do I teach this and kind of get past the expectations that people may have of, the culture.
Yeah, so I think that ties back into really kind of honing the craft. Like it really came with time and practice. In my case, it was really revision, 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 like rewrite after rewrite, every little bit kind of, helps you improve. And I really kind of embraced that and took it to heart. Now, if you are a naturally born talented writer, I think you should stick with that approach, all power to you. But I was not that. So I had to kind of painstakingly revise and rewrite, and that kind of teaches you the kind of ropes of good writing with showing, basically, not telling. And once I kind of understood what show don't tell means, I think everybody has heard that famous quote, like, don't tell me the moon was shining, show me the glint of moonlight on broken glass, right? Every writer has probably heard that. So once I kind of understood what that meant, the rest of it kind of flew naturally, the cultural parts, because this kind of culture is so ingrained in this kid's life. It's just part of his everyday life. So um that goes on to show that even within living in the modern West, immigrants kind of bring this kind of diverse perspective on everything, and it integrates to a certain extent, but to a certain extent it's also like sort of a microcosm within the greater Western society. And this kind of intimate tie-in of the culture with daily life ended up being rather easy to write. All I had to do is basically stay true to Ramin's character, and obviously use my own personal life experiences to inform him. But he also took on basically a life of his own, and I just followed him along. And as I followed him along, the cultural elements just fell into place.
I love that. We are talking with Ahmad Saber, who is about his new novel, Ramin Abbas Has Major Questions. This comes out on March 3rd. We have a link in the show notes and on our website for you to pre-order your copy. Um, I, I, I don't want to give away spoilers, obviously, but can we talk about the meet cute?
Oh, yeah. So the meet cute. I mean, meet cutes are one of my most favorite things, to in romance novels and writing. I guess in this case, it would depend if it's meet cute with his crush or with his good friend, without giving too many spoilers. But I guess I'll focus on the latter. In I wanted to capture sort of a very casual meet cute that would be more realistic to a teen's life. In this case, in particular, the meet cute actually happens in a flashback sequence when Ramin first meets this other kid who's new to the school. Um, I think personally it's a pretty favorite scene of mine to write, where Ramin comes in and is praying in this prayer hall in his school, and then he notices out of the corner of his eye some new kid is praying there as well. There's just the two of them in this little mosque, and then the kid keeps praying, and then as he's leaving, he notices that someone flipped his shoes around. So when you enter a mosque, you would leave your shoes, pointing this way, and then go straight up and step on the carpet. But when he comes back, his shoes have been flipped around so that it would be easier to put on. And so he notices that, and he knows that this kid did it. I thought that was a pretty cute moment where he's like really kind of feeling an initial admiration for this kid's kindness, but he hasn't really cued in to it being a mute cute. So he notices that, makes a mental check of that, and then just goes on his way. But yeah, I thought that was a pretty nice thing for this new kid to do for Ramin.
It is. So everyone knows Heartstopper has the whole rugby thing. You have soccer in yours. So talk to us about that part of the storyline, because it's a plot point that happens early in the novel. So I don't feel like we're going to give anything away. But talk to us about the that kind of, I don't know if it's a trope, but the person joining the soccer team. Just
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
not a soccer player.
Yeah, so I have a quick fun fact actually. The story actually started off being about cricket in a very
Oh, really?
early draft. So the cricket is a very fun sport to write about. But I did take my agent's advice to heart. He didn't. He just floated it as an idea. He said, "Look, if you wanna." Maybe appeal to a little bit of a more broader sport that's a little bit more well known, it might be a good idea. And I took that advice. So that's how it actually came to soccer. I actually had to learn a lot about soccer, and I had to find a friend who would beta read for me, who's a soccer player. So thank you so much, Bruce, if you're listening. Um, and the way it came to soccer is because it's just such a ripe avenue for conflict. An unathletic kid being thrust into a soccer team makes for very juicy conflict already. I must admit, part of it was inspired by that episode from Glee, season one, where yeah, where Kurt is like goes on to the football team, and then he's like he just makes like he's himself, and he just makes such an amazing addition to the team, to everybody's surprise. So that kind of inspired me, that kind of ripe setting for conflict. And then when you put in a soccer team captain who this kid has a crush on, I think it makes for even more juicy conflict, because obviously he wants to impress this captain as well while hating soccer. So that's why I chose this kind of sports setting. An unathletic kid kind of being thrust into a pretty serious team. It's a high school varsity team. The rest of the kids take it pretty seriously.
I had completely forgotten about that episode of Glee, or
Yeah,
that plot line, rather, from Glee. So that is, I love to know that that was part of the inspiration
yeah.
for this. I have to come up on a break here. When we come back, I'm going to have a question about, because I think YA literature is one of our most revolutionary that we have right now of queer lit, and I love how folks tackle in this literature all the various ways of coming out. So I'm going to have a coming out question for you when we come back. You are listening to The Gailey Show. We are talking with Ahmad Saber, who is about his new novel, rather, Ramin Abbas Has Major Questions, which comes out on March 3rd. You can go to the show notes if you're on YouTube or listening on Spotify right now to find a link to get your own copy, to pre-order it, or you can go to our websites at am950radio.com or heartlandsignal.com. Just go to today's date and you can find the link there. Stay tuned. More with Ahmad Saber when we come back. Welcome back to The Gailey Show. I'm John Parker. We are coming up on the bottom of the hour. Author Ahmad Saber is a doctor specializing in rheumatology and internal medicine, and is now specializing in his work as a debut novelist. His book, Ramin Abbas Has Major Questions, is coming out on March 3rd. He is our guest. All right, so before the break, Ahmad, I was talking about how YA Lit is just being so revolutionary and so cool in the way that it is navigating the coming out story and challenging the idea of what does coming out mean today, and how does that look, and all the various manifestations of that, which is really sort of challenging, what folks did as, Generation Xers or early millennials, right? Or the baby boomers. So talk to me about, please don't give away any like spoilers or anything like that, but talk to me about the ideas of coming out that you were navigating as a debut novelist.
Hmm. Yeah, I would just like to start off by saying, I really hope and look forward to the day when coming out story is no longer there, meaning it has served its purpose and it's no longer a thing, right? But up until we get to that point, it's super important to tell these stories. And like you said, in all of their manifestations, it can look so different for different kids and adults. For me, when I went into this, the book really ended up being kind of a strong modality for healing for myself. I was actually dealing with a lot of the same issues with Ramin, and that of course informed a lot of the sensitive parts of the character and the themes there. So I knew that going into telling this story, I knew that I had to kind of accept this as therapy for myself as well. But really, the big one, um, I had my coming out much later than the kid in the novel, Ramin. So for me, part of it was an exercise in vicariously living through Ramin and exploring what it might have looked like for a religious teen, in this case, a religious Muslim teen, to have to come out to his community and parents who are still very devout. So that's the major theme I wanted to explore, is how, first of all, capture that kind of angst and suffocation that would create. So hopefully, if any adults are reading this, can empathize with that, especially if any parents of closeted religious kids hopefully end up reading the book, can empathize with what their child's experience might look like. So first step was to capture that angst and suffocation, and then the second one was to capture basically the inner strength that kind of comes out, and frees you from all of that suffocation and angst. So yeah, in this case, really the major themes that I wanted to explore was that tension with religion, that tension with culture, and despite that, still, somehow finding the strength to do it safely, I must admit. So, you must, if there's any kids listening to this, the safety is always number one, right? Not everybody can come out at any time. There has to be a certain time for certain people. But with this kid, finding a support network, even outside of immediate family, was one of the big themes I wanted to explore, because not everybody is unfortunately blessed with supportive parents, but there's still a lot of hope to look forward to. That kind of support can come from elsewhere, and once there's trust established with that source of validation, then I think it can be an incredibly healing and comforting source of support, which I think we can open our hearts and minds to. So yeah, those were the themes. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but
Totally did.
okay.
Totally did. No, I love when you're talking about that healing. I think that there is something. I'll just speak to myself as a reader, and other readers that I've talked to about how healing it can be, even as an adult, in your late 20s, 30s, or early 40s, where you go in and you read a YA book, and people are like, "Why are you reading YA?" And I'm like, "Because it's so healing and cathartic." And so I definitely had that here in your debut novel. Even though I'm not part of the, I'm not Muslim or anything, but there was so much in it that I just, it was very. It meant a lot, and particularly, again, different faith traditions. And I'm curious about this because, like, Armenian Apostolic Christianity comes, like, there's so much stigma around that, and so many preconceived notions about what that is and what it isn't. How did you navigate writing faith and the various? Because you have a lot of different facets of how you represent Islam in here. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So that is a very good question. Thank you for asking that. The biggest thing for me going into telling a story about faith was to recognize that it may not be black and white. Some of the messaging I got from various sources, from media, or just kind of exploring, forums on internet and stuff, was, you have to reject one, right? Like, you can choose to either be gay, or in this case, Muslim, right? But I'm sure it applies to anybody's, experience with devout, or strict conservative religious upbringing, which does not have generous interpretation of the scripture for LGBTQ folks, right? So in fact, just a quick diversion, I'm reading this memoir by David Archuleta, Devout. It's excellent. I highly recommend it. And when reading his experience, again, shocked me how similar it was to mine, even though he was brought up with Mormon faith. So really, I realized that, it's not always black and white. There is nuance there, and I wanted to explore that nuance. And the second thing I told myself was, I don't want to tell a story of rejection of faith outright, because that is a valid option for some, that works for some, but it may not work for everybody, especially if you are, if your religion is so tightly ingrained with culture as well. It informs your daily life and culture. So what I thought to myself is, probably, even let's say for argument's sake, this kid, in this case, Ramin, or any other kid, when they're 25 or when they're 35, end up rejecting their faith. it's not necessarily going to happen in their formative teenage years. They really need comfort in faith. Um, and yes, sure, they could deconstruct it and then reconstruct it and find a new sense of spirituality, but they're not necessarily always ready to suddenly give it up, right? And so that's why I wanted to tell a story of reconciliation rather than rejection. But yeah, it was challenging. It is a sensitive topic, you know. All I did basically was again follow the heart of the main character Ramin and just kind of staying authentic to him and asking myself what would he do, and that kind of ended up, you know, basically the story writes itself once you know your character. So yeah, that helped a lot.
Thank you for that. The book is Ramin Abbas Has Major Questions. It comes out March 3rd. Links to pre-order your copy in the show notes and on our website. You can connect with Ahmad on Instagram. He is at the Ahmad Saber. Ahmad, thank you. Oh, actually, I wanted to say something. I looked in the book jacket here, and you happen to say that the New York City's Culture Espressos has the best chocolate chip cookies in the world. Well, I'm officially inviting you to the Minnesota State Fair, where you will find the actual best cookies in the world, which is Martha's sweet chocolate chip cookies. But, you know, open invitation to come to the Minnesota State Fair. Anyway, Ahmad, thank you so much for joining us today on The Gailey Show.
Thank you so much for having me. Another shout out to Minneapolis. I have to come for those cookies now.
Yeah, you have to. Minnesota State Fair, 10 days. Biggest, great get together of Minnesota. All right, I got to take a break. When we come back, we're going to have author and critic Ilana Masad. Stay tuned. You are listening to The Gailey Show on AM 950 Radio, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk. Coming to you from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and airing on WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk where facts matter. Welcome back to The Gailey Show. I'm John Parker. It is 33 minutes after the hour. Also streaming on our YouTube channel right now. And if you like what we're doing, click that subscribe button and leave us a comment about how you're enjoying the books we're talking about today on the show. And speaking of books, it is the third Friday of the month, and Ilana Masad joins us every third Friday of the month. Ilana is a writer of fiction, nonfiction, and criticism whose work has been widely published. She holds a PhD from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln and is the author of the novels All My Mother's Lovers and Beings, as well as the co-editor of the forthcoming anthology, Here for All the Reasons Why We Watch The Bachelor. Ilana, so good to see you again. I can't believe it's February.
I know. It's time is moving very strangely, but I'm wearing my trying my best sweatshirt. So, you know, I'm trying my best.
I need a t-shirt and a mug and a bumper sticker and all of the things for that. It's been a wild 2026 so far, which I keep saying 2025. Anyway, you have 3 books for us today. What's
4, in fact.
4? My goodness.
Yes.
4.
Yes.
I gotta check it out.
So
yeah,
since
which one are we starting with?
Oh, yeah. So since it is Black History Month, which is the shortest month of the year, I decided we'd do 4 books rather than 3 like we usually do, so we can stuff as many in. And since specifically it is Black History Month, I thought we would focus on a sort of timeline. So the first book that we are looking at is Hours by Philip B. Williams, who is also a poet. And Hours came out in 2024, but it is about the 1830s. And it is a doorstopper of a novel, but it is one of those where like you want to sit with it for hours and read, you know, even though it's like really long, it's just so absorbing because
Did you say doorstopper?
Yes, that's a term. Yeah, like it's a big novel.
Oh,
a fat novel.
I was like, do you like close the door to read it on your own?
I like that interpretation too, actually. It could mean that as well, but no, I meant that it's a big fat book. It's like 700 pages or something.
Oh, dang.
Yeah. Maybe
Philip wasn't messing around.
Yeah. And again, but it's such a pleasure to read, as many novels by poets are. And so it starts in our contemporary world where a 17-year-old Black boy stands back up shortly after he's been shot dead by a police officer. And then we go back to the sort of history of the land that he is standing on. And we go back to the 1830s when a woman who we only know by her name Saint travels around Arkansas, freeing the enslaved and killing their so-called masters. And she takes all of the people that she frees to an area near St. Louis and founds a town with them called Ours, which is an all-Black town and is meant to be kind of a haven. And she uses her conjuring powers to hide it from the outside world, which at times, over time, ends up causing some issues. And it's one of these books that is very much a saga. So like there's a lot of characters in it. And some of them we see for a short amount of time. Some of them we see for some of them we focus on for much longer. Saint sort of comes in and out. And she's the heart of the novel because she's the heart of this town that she founded. But she tries not to wield power over it. Too much power over it. And there's this line that I love where in order to keep the townspeople safe, she feels like she has to keep them nearby. So like I said, she protects them from the outside world, but she emotionally keeps them at a distance because, and this is a line from the book, quote, "If there's anything more shockingly unpredictable than freedom, it's love." Mm. So she's scared of coming to love them and thus messing them up or messing up the town in some way. And she's kind of a mystery to herself as well as to us. She doesn't really know where she got these powers. And some of that is revealed over the course of the novel. But we also watch as the town kind of grows and children are born into the town. So for instance, two of the boys that are born are Luther Phillip and Justice, and they are friends who have this kind of almost erotic, intense friendship. We also have Francis, who is a person whose pronouns and gender kind of change according to who is looking and who is addressing Francis. And Francis's friend and accompaniment, Joy. And we have all sorts of other characters. And it sort of jumps around in time. Sometimes time kind of passes mysteriously. It's very much in the magical realism tradition, but it's a beautiful, beautiful book that is historical and takes place during the time when Black people were still enslaved. But that is not like its central premise. So it is about free people of that era. Wow. So that is our first book. And then in the timeline of history, the next book we're going to look at is Passing by Nella Larsen, which is a classic. It is a 1929 novel. And it's the one where when I teach it, I kind of have to convince my students that it is a queer novel. And the reason is because it was published in 1929. It is very repressed. It also is dealing with women of a kind of certain social class. So it's about Irene, who is part of a sort of Black middle class in New York, and an old childhood friend of hers, Claire, who is now passing for white and is married to a white racist man.
Oh, wait, I've seen this movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Horrible. We're talking about the book, and I'm like, I saw the movie. But the movie was great. Oh my gosh, Tessa Thompson. I'm sorry.
Yes. Sorry, I thought that you were saying that the movie was horrible, and I was like, no, don't tell me that. I want to see it still because it's Tessa Thompson, and I love her.
It's amazing. It's an amazing movie. Good. I said it's horrible that we're talking about books today, and I'm like, I saw the movie.
Right. But I hear the movie is very faithful to the original. So if you've seen the movie and you want to read the book, I can highly recommend it. It is also a novella, so it's a short read in comparison to our previous book. The reason that I have to
film is they film it in black and white. So to navigate that sort of the starkness of like black or white, but then like the idea of passing and okay, sorry, we're talking about the book, John, the book.
Well, once I watch the movie, I will come back to you to talk about the movie as well.
Perfect.
That could be a fun segment we could do, is like adaptations
Ooh.
of the book and movie. Like, how do they hold up together? Something to think about for the future. Anyway, so Passing, yes, the reason that I have to sort of convince my students that it's a queer novel is because there is nothing overt happens between these women. Spoiler alert, but it's a book that's, almost 100 years old, so not really. It's all of the queerness is really, it's there, it's on the page, but it's very repressed, and you have to kind of see it in the description. So one of the things that you can see in the book is how it's from Irene's perspective, although it's written in the third person, but it's very close to Irene, and like we see inside her head. And so she often notes Claire's beauty. She notes her lips. She notes, her shoulders. She notes her trilling laugh, like all of these little details that are not the way that you notice someone when you're not attracted to them, or when you don't have some kind of, whether overt or repressed, erotic feelings for them. And so it is an example of like this early queer novel that is not as openly queer as books from 20 or 30 years later, like Giovanni's Room. Giovanni's Room is very explicit. And so when I teach that book, my students are like, oh yeah, of course. But with Passing, I always have to kind of do some hand holding, because we live in a time now when we can see so much more. I mean, look, heated rivalry is a phenomenon. People are relatively comfortable with seeing basically soft gay male porn on their television screens at home. And in many ways, that's great.
And supposedly the NHL commissioner loves it and binged it all in one night.
Interesting. I did not hear that.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I'm sure, well, John, I'm sure he was watching it for the hockey.
But what a great book to teach, though, because there is that so much of our history has to be read between the lines and inferred, because even if Noah wanted to write it, the publishers wouldn't have published that.
Right.
It would have been so much harder to do that. I can say it feels very sapphic in the movie. So
it does. And it feels sapphic if you know how to read that way. And that's part of, when I teach queer literature, that's part of what I'm doing, obviously, is teaching like how to read between the lines, because many people don't have the trick for it anymore when they don't need to, right? Like, also young people have explicitly queer YA novels, depending where and depending on the status of book bans in their particular state and school district, but still, they don't need to develop the way that you and I did, the ability to read between the lines and find the queerness in a book like that. So that is our second book. Do we have time for our third book before the break?
So we have Hours by Philip B. Williams. We have Passing by Nella Larson. As a reminder to folks, we're going to have links in the show notes on our website for you to get your copies of these. We are here with author and critic Ilana Masad because it is the third Friday of the month, and Ilana joins us on the third Friday of the month to share queer books that we need to be reading. Yes, we have time. We still have 2 more books to go.
Yes. Okay. So my third book for the day is bringing us to the 1980s. Although again, this is a more contemporarily written novel. So this is My Government Means to Kill Me by Rashid Newson, which came out in 2022. And I think Newson's new book is coming out soon, I think this summer. But anyway, this book is about the 1980s in New York. And it follows this young man named Earl Singleton III, who goes by Trey. And he has rejected his parents' trust fund and has moved to New York City with, his own money, which for those who are not on YouTube, I put quotation marks around, because this is money that, is largely a lifetime of birthday money, as he says, as well as some money that he's made working summer jobs. So, but so he moves to New York entirely on his own. to kind of try to live as himself, because where he grew up, he was always bullied at school. He didn't really have friends. And in New York, he finds himself, he finds community. But first he makes the mistake of moving into the Chelsea Hotel, thinking it was still like a grand, wonderful place of yore, when it was not already by the 80s. It's no longer star-studded,
Oh.
But he does meet a friend there who then becomes his roommate, and becomes his kind of guide to gay Black New York. And one of the central spaces that he kind of gains his political consciousness in is the Mount Morris Baths, which I believe are a real bathhouse in Harlem, or were. I'm not actually sure if they're still open, but they were a real bathhouse in Harlem, catering especially to Black gay men. And he meets there a certain Mr. Bayard Rustin. Yes.
Is it historical fiction or is this real?
No, it's historical fiction. And there is a footnote that says that there is no evidence that Bayard Rustin ever visited this bath house, but he did live in New York at the time, I believe. And so this is Rashid Newson taking liberties, and why not?
Love it.
Yes.
Love it. Let's hold there because I want to hear more about that, and I have to fit in a very quick break. So this third book that we're talking about is My Government Means to Kill Me by Rashid Newson. After the break, we're going to continue talking about this one, and then Ilana's going to have a fourth book for us to read this month. You are listening to The Gaily Show on AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk. Keep the conversation going on Blue Sky. We are at thegailyshow.org, where you can leave me all sorts of fun direct messages. See you after this break. Welcome back to The Gaily Show. I'm John Parker. We are coming up on the top of the hour. It is the third Friday of the month when we are joined by author and critic Ilana Masad, who shares with us queer books that we should be reading and has a collection of 4 books for us today that are themed to Black History Month. The one we were talking about just before the break was My Government Means to Kill Me by Rashid Newson, which is some historical fiction that includes Bayard Rustin. Ilana, please go on.
Yes, so we have a lot of scenes of Trey, this young Black gay man, sitting with famed Bayard Rustin, civil rights leader, while Bayard is in his towel in the sauna. And he just kind of schools Trey on the history of queer activism, the history of Black activism. It happens very organically. Like it's not like a shoehorned in, oh, I'm your sensei teacher person, like he just comes across him a lot, and they just increasingly have conversations. And it's really lovely. And so, part of what Rustin also opens Trey's eyes to is the AIDS crisis. And of course, you might think, well, but 1980s New York, how could you not know about the AIDS crisis? And I think that Newson's actually doing something really smart here, where he's reminding you that if you weren't already embedded in a queer community at the time, and if you were young and didn't know much about politics and weren't clued in yet to how AIDS was being sort of suppressed and erased in the media, how it was being ignored by governments, like you might not know. I mean, there's this quote where he talks about, where Trey, who's the narrator of the book, he talks about how, like, if this cashier, suddenly stopped showing up, I just assumed he got a new job. If this cute dog walker stopped walking in my path, okay, he changed routes. Like, he didn't assume that those people were dead, even though if you were maybe a New York native who had been in community with these people, of course you would have known. But since Trey is so new, he's just coming into community. And so he ends up, part of the book's sort of driving force is Trey's coming to political consciousness and his coming into political activism. And what's really beautiful about how Newson writes this is that he shows the very messy human side of activism, which I feel like is not talked about as often. You know, like there's this idea of like the activist as this pure creature, selfless creature, but like activism only works when you are in community. You cannot be an activist alone, right? You have to be in community, and communities are human. And you know, the AIDS activism is was famously fraught politically. You know, everyone had different ways of going about things. People fought, people had arguments, people didn't agree on tactics, and ultimately all of them were necessary, just in different ways. But in the meantime, there were like interpersonal conflicts, and that's just part of it. And so he both sort of volunteers with some of these, you know, more well-known organizations, but he also, and this part I really love, and it's dear to my heart, is he also ends up volunteering at a kind of unofficial hospice run by a lesbian, because that is a real thing that was done at the time. Lesbian women were all over the country, you know, were very active in caring for AIDS patients who are towards their end of life. Yes. Okay. So I think we only have time.
Cut you off on this one, but I want to make sure we have enough time because I've got just under 3.5 minutes, and I want to make sure we get to our fourth book.
Yes. So let's get to our fourth book. So our fourth book is The Other Wife by Jackie Thomas Kennedy. And we were talking about bi erasure during the break. So this one is about a chaotic bi woman. And this one is contemporary, where people are allowed to be messy and have, you know, adventures and feel things to their former crushes. So in this book, we have a married woman named Zuzu, and she's living in the house of her dreams, in the town of her dreams. But she still feels like something's missing. She has a kid with her wife, but she has this old friend named Cash, who is a guy that she had a really intense crush on in college, and they were kind of best friends. And over the course of the book, she kind of comes closer and closer to making something actually happen with him, in a very wonderfully messy way, that has to do with her wife discovering that her ex, who she's still close friends with, has found a lump in her breast. And so they go visit because she might have cancer. And Zuzu is jealous, but can't admit to herself that she's jealous. So she runs off to meet Cash. It's all great. And it kind of goes back and forth between her current timeline where this is happening and her memories of Cash and how she met her wife, Agnes, and then learning that Cash married his college girlfriend, Molly. And it's just like this wonderfully delicious contemporary kind of anti-romance in a way. And I really love it. And I've been shouting it out since it came out.
The Other Wife by Jackie Thomas Kennedy. All right, so let's go through the list again. Hours by Philip B. Williams. Passing by Nella Larson, also fabulous film. My Government Means to Kill Me by Rashid Newson, and The Other Wife by Jackie Thomas Kennedy. What a list you brought for us today.
Yes, indeed. I prepared. I did my homework.
as we look forward to every third Friday of the month, you can connect with Ilana at her website, Ilana Masad, MASAD.com. If you haven't read Beings yet, add that to your list as well. You need to be reading that novel. It is a delight. Ilana, I guess we'll see you in just a few weeks here, which is going to feel like 30 seconds from now.
Yep, absolutely. See you in March.
All right. Talk to you soon. All right, folks. Well, that is our show for today. You can keep the gay going all weekend long, though. On Saturday on AM 950 Radio in the afternoon, we have The Illegal Trans Woman with Ellie Krug at 4 o'clock. At 5 o'clock, we have The Downright Upright Show with Philip Anthony. On Sunday in Chicago on WCPT 820, starting at 11 a.m., it is brunch, Sunday brunch with your gay best friends, Ellen Miller and Scott Duff for Out Chicago. So tune in then. You can listen on TuneIn, on the radio, Alexa, all the things. You can keep the gay radio going all weekend long. And until this time on Monday, keep it queer, America.